Is there a best starter item for hunters? Which one has the highest DPS potential? Do you ever wonder if you choose a particular starter item, how should that change the way you build throughout the game? Today, we're jumping into the numbers to find out. Welcome back to Smite Maths, where I've used over 70 hours of computing power to calculate the damage of every single hunter build. Today, we're looking at starter items. Starter items provide a great advantage at the start of the game, and each has its own unique strength and weakness. Gilded Arrow provides 25 basic attack damage, the highest of any of the starter items, making it great for hunters who rely on their auto attacks to clear, like Izanami, Rama and Charybdis. It also provides a gold bonus, up to 600 gold in 25 minutes if you use it optimally, which makes it a good tool for farming up to late game, and for this reason might be good on gods like Jingwei, who has a weak early game but great late game and whose passive allows you to farm harder and get more stacks. It can also be used as a tool for aggression. When you kill a tagged enemy, you gain an attack speed buff which can be used at an optimal time to position to damage your enemies. Death's Toll provides mana and health sustain, making it great for lanes where enemies have strong poke, keeping you in the fight for longer and allowing you to stay in lane and farm. Leather Cowl provides up to 20% attack speed in the early game, making it great for securing pressure in lane. Each has their early advantages, and it's up to you to decide which one best suits your god and opponents. But the question still remains, which one is the best for late game DPS potential? And for the starter item you chose, how should you now optimise for late game? When fully stacked, each starter item provides these stats. The most likely candidates for top DPS when fully stacked are probably going to be these two, Diamond Arrow and Death's Temper, as each provide great stats. Death's Temper will be great with crit, as it provides extra auto attack damage that scales nicely with crit chance, but will it still hold up when the enemy tanks have Spectral? It also doesn't provide any extra damage to yellow damage items like Kins, which I've shown in my last videos is a must-buy item against tanks. Diamond Arrow provides great all-around stats. With 75% attack speed and 10% penetration, it scales greatly with all items, crit and yellow damage. But we also have to consider lifesteal, which is provided by both Cowls. Will it be more effective to use the Cowls as your only lifesteal item and forego the other starter items? Ornate Arrow also has extremely strong stats, but will the lack of penetration leave it lacking when hitting tanks with Spectral? These are the results from running the simulation when all starter items are fully stacked. I'm showing you the top 5 builds that contain lifesteal. We can see a pretty conclusive result here. Diamond Arrow easily comes out on top. And, in fact, Diamond Arrow comes out on top in the top 11 builds, with Death's Temper finally appearing at build number 12. You might be wondering how I've decided to measure these best builds. These builds have been ordered on how long it takes to kill 1 Guardian with Spectral, 1 Warrior with Spectral, and 3 Squishies in the fastest time possible. The lowest total of these 5 numbers gives us our best build. We'll look at the top builds for other starter items in a second, but for now let's talk about why high-res would allow such a seemingly broken item into the game. Late game starter items are unique items that vary in strength depending on the situation. Almost all starter items depend on a variable number of stacks that can change from moment to moment, making them some of the most inconsistent items in the game. This inconsistency is a key part of their balance, and why, when fully stacked, Diamond Arrow is a clear favourite. The issue with Diamond Arrow is that it is difficult to get and maintain stacks, meaning these top builds displayed will vary wildly depending on how many stacks Diamond Arrow has. So, to compensate for this, I am now displaying the exact same builds as above, but now Diamond Arrow has no stacks, and so is providing no attack speed. We can see a very large drop off in time to kill here. In the top build we see a massive increase in time to kill by 28%, which shows a large risk factor in purely relying on Diamond Arrow for attack speed. The other builds have a similar percentage drop off, but the crit builds suffer the most and are definitely the most risky when you don't have Diamond Arrow stacked. Now, as a baseline for us to compare these builds to, here are the 2 highest DPS builds when all starter items have no stacks. Keep an eye on this, it will allow us to calculate risk when building starter items. This also shows if you're not a gambler and you're looking for a build with the lowest risk, that is to say the build doesn't rely on any starter item stacks, and you're fine with accepting Leader's Cowl as the only lifesteal item in your build, these 2 are the best builds for you. Now I've listed the best builds with Death's Temper fully stacked. As we can see, crit is highly valued now as expected, with 2 crit items appearing in every top 5 build. This is unsurprising as the extra auto attack damage provided by Death's Temper also increases crit damage, and the compounding effect of Death's Temper fully stacked with a devoted Deathbringer that increases both crit chance and crit damage means, on average, in these builds, each crit is hitting for 270% of normal basic attack damage. And the percentage increase to crit chance by devoted Deathbringer means each auto attack is much more likely to crit. The attack speed on Death's Temper is also great for crit builds, as Rage and Deathbringer are both strong crit items that lack attack speed, which is why we see Bladed Boomerang appear. The attack speed from it is invaluable. As before, here are the same builds but when Death's Temper now has no stacks, a significant drop off in time to kill again. The top build has had an increase in time to kill of 20%, a large difference. But this still makes the time to kill of the top build with Death's Temper with no stacks lower than the top build with Diamond Arrow with no stacks. Meaning, if you are building a crit build, Death's Temper is the less risky option, but does still have less damage potential when fully stacked, meaning it is lower risk, lower reward when compared to Diamond Arrow. This is exaggerated by the fact it is easier to gain stacks on Death's Temper, as you don't have to last hit enemies like you do with Diamond Arrow, making it even lower risk. We can also compare these builds to the best builds when starter items have no stacks, a significant increase in time to kill again, but it's up to you to decide if you want to take that risk. Now, let's look at the best builds for Ornate Arrow when it is fully stacked. Again, we can see Devoted Deathbringer in every build, as it amplifies the efficiency of other crit items like Ornate Arrow. This means any build that contains Devoted Deathbringer should always be paired with other crit items. We can also see Demon Blade appearing in these builds over Bladed Boomerang and Rage. Part of the reason these items appear in the top builds for Death's Temper is that Death's Temper scales much better with crit chance, as it amplifies crit damage, which is why those builds were favouring high crit chance items. But with Ornate Arrow, it is better to get the penetration and attack speed from Demon Blade. Here's the same builds now, but Ornate Arrow has no stacks. We can see a percentage drop off of 19% for the top build. The fact that crit chance and attack speed have now decreased because Ornate Arrow has no stacks has made Devoted Deathbringer less efficient. And the model is favouring the items that give more attack speed now, as attack speed is one of the most important factors when considering DPS. And we have lost 25% attack speed in these builds now that Ornate Arrow has no stacks. But Ornate Arrow does have a few advantages. For one, you can decide when you want the stacks, making it more consistent than the other starter items we've mentioned. It also increases gold gain, meaning you can reach full build faster in a game, which is a huge advantage, especially when building expensive items like Devoted Deathbringer. Here again is the most consistent build, so you have something to compare these Ornate Arrow builds to. Now, here's the top 5 builds when Hunter's Cowl is fully stacked. This top build is a jack of all trades build that focuses on neither single target damage or high area damage, but its average damage does kill the enemy team in the fastest time when compared to the rest of these builds. Now, as before, here are the same builds when Cowl isn't stacked. A smaller percentage drop off when compared to the other starter items, but its maximum damage potential when fully stacked is quite a bit lower. About 3 seconds longer to kill the enemy team when compared to the other starter items fully stacked. But it is worth mentioning that Hunter's Cowl is very easy to stack, as you only have to be near one ally. Another concern with these builds is that they rely on lifesteal solely from Hunter's Cowl, which means you only have 6% lifesteal until level 20, which might not be viable or suit your playstyle. Especially when you consider that sustain allows you to stay in lane longer and farm, which is a critical part of playing Hunters, as they are late game characters that need to scale and buy items to have the most impact. To remedy this, I am now going to display the best builds that contain Hunter's Cowl fully stacked and contain at least one other lifesteal item. This only creates about a 1 second difference between the top builds with Cowl and the top builds with Cowl that contain at least one other lifesteal item, which might not seem that bad. But if we compare these builds to the top builds for other starter items, we can see about a 4 second difference in time to kill the whole enemy team, which is huge. Especially when you consider that the difference between winning and losing a game could all come down to how fast you kill enemies. Killing enemies slower gives them more chance to get an extra ability off, more of a chance to kill you, and gives the person behind the keyboard more time to think. That could decide a game. Now displayed is the best builds for Leader's Cowl when fully stacked. Leader's Cowl gives you a percentage increase to power which contributes to all damage a hunter can throw out, whether that be auto attacks, crits, and Odysseus' bow, but not Kin's. Although, here, I have not modelled it to be fully stacked. It is providing a 14% increase to power, which means you will have 5 allies around you and 1 enemy. I have done this because we are calculating damage against enemy gods. Now, here are the same builds when Cowl has no stacks, and so provides only a 5% increase to power. The numbers aren't blowing us out of the water here. That's because an increase to power doesn't do nearly as much as an increase to attack speed or crit chance. This is because Leader's Cowl is one of the few items hunters get that isn't completely selfish, as it also provides the increase in percent power to allies, making it great for team fights, Phoenix and Tower sieges, and objectives like Fire Giant. Pretty much any situation where your team are going to be grouped together. However, again in these builds, Cowl is also the only item in the build providing lifesteal. So as before, here are the top builds that contain Leader's Cowl and also contain 1 other lifesteal item. Again, comparing these builds to the builds for other starter items fully stacked, we can see Leader's Cowl is quite lacking, but do you think it's worth it for the extra damage provided to your team? Death's Embrace is a more unique starter item that hunters might consider. It isn't there to amplify damage, its primary use is as a sustain item. Unlike lifesteal, Death's Temper Sustain doesn't depend on how much damage you deal to a target. For example, you will get more lifesteal per hit when hitting a squishy target, as you are dealing more damage compared to hitting a tank. This sustain can be valuable, and may allow you to 1v1 warriors better, as your sustain will heal most of the damage they deal to you. This item does have its place in some hunter builds and playstyles, but its lack of attack speed, crit chance and penetration will definitely leave it lacking in damage when compared to other items. But just how much damage will we be losing out on when we build this item? Here are the top 5 builds that contain Death's Embrace. We can see a much longer time to kill when compared to other builds. But this item may allow you to stay in the fight for longer and get more damage off, but it's up to you to decide if it's valuable or not. Now, for reference, here are the top 5 builds for every starter item when they are fully stacked. Take a look, pause if you like. After everything we've discussed, what build do you think is best? The high risk, high reward damage of Crit and Diamond Arrow, or the less risky Death's Temper builds? I hope this video has informed you well enough to make a sound decision. Now, I have taken the average best build for each starter item. These are the least risky builds for each starter item. That is to say, the build has good, but not great damage when the starter item is fully stacked, and still good, but not terrible damage when the starter item isn't stacked. If you don't like to gamble, these are the best builds for you. And that's everything. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new, and I hope you take this information to the battleground to up your gameplay. And remember, don't guess, do the math.